Welcome to the Prix Forum Interactive Art Plus category of this year, special edition. I'm Emiko Ogawa, head of Prix Ars Electronica. And Prix Ars Electronica, this is the Prix Forum is the 30 minutes discussion session of the Prix Ars Electronica's winners and the jury member of this year. The topic of session today is what is plus of interactive art in the age of uncertainty. And our speakers are, first of all, I'd like to introduce Simon Weckert here we welcome him on the stage in our studio, and via online. And Lee McCarthy, the Golden Nica winner of the Hard Someone. And Lynn Hershman, Leeson, the winner of this year's Award of Distinction with her work Shadow Stalker. And the moderator will be the Vladan Joler, our jury member of this year's Interactive Art Plus category. So Vladan, please start the session.
Okay, thank you, Emiko. So first of all, really congratulations for all three of you. It was I really think that all three works are really great and contributing to an opening to some new questions, and I'm really, happy to be here. But also, I was happy to be part of the jury, and it was not so easy to make decisions. But I think what we did at the end, it's really great. So when we had this great pleasure to see all the works that were submitted for Ars Electronica this year, I had this strong feeling when we were looking at them that they belong to some different time. So even most of the works were submitted just a few weeks before this virus outbreak. Almost none of them were dealing with this topic and this really tectonic change in our lives. But then when I was looking closely again to the works that we choose, I really think that all three of your works are addressing and problems that they're addressing are even more amplified somehow right now. And so if we think for example, all of those rooms and those personal spaces that are shown in Lauren's work became some kind of main stage for what's going on in these countless Zoom meetings and everything. And then predictive technologies are now used. The main topic of Lynn's work was also now became are shifting and even more used, but also shifting to this kind of tracing of virus and stuff like this. And also all of those mappings and data representations and maps became also the focal point of what we are living, because now every day we are just completely obsessed with watching those numbers and data representation and maps of contagion or whatever. So my question is how do you see your work now after few months, or is it now half a year later, in this new context, in this new reality, in this new crazy world that we are living? So that's my first question. Can we maybe start with Lauren and then?
Sure. Well, I guess when I started making this piece or the series of pieces, I was thinking about this kind of access to intimacy that Alexa or other smart home systems and the entities behind them had. And there's almost this feeling of jealousy. I think as someone that's very shy and kind of struggles with social interaction, I was kind of enticed by that idea of just someone just granting you this access to their kind of most intimate space, their home. And so part of the project was almost this hack to see if I could get myself in that same way. And so I guess thinking back over the last 6 months, it's been strange because suddenly everybody is almost required to open up that boundary, which I felt when I was doing this project, I was so aware of that feels like such a line to cross, that it's being sold to us as it's about convenience, but like that's a very private space, and suddenly we kind of had no option but to open that up in some way. Yet we're still navigating. Just because I show you my bedroom in the background doesn't necessarily mean that I'm inviting you into like my personal life. So there's this really strange juxtaposition that's happening, and I think it speaks to kind of this larger thing we're dealing with, where there's just like these different contexts coming together, and it's very hard to keep them, to figure out how to navigate when you think about these different scales of crisis, of personal challenges and difficulties and goals, and then the communities around you, and all of this is like being fed to you through a computer screen. So I think it's like you said, like the work was made before the pandemic shut down, but on the other hand, it was thinking about a lot of these. I think we were already seeing this trend towards this kind of collapse of context into these internet portals, and how do you navigate as a human through that in some way that feels sustainable?
Well, maybe I could continue. When this time, especially when I think about data and data protection, I would say that these questions are actually, for me, are getting more and more important, right? Because as we have to stay at home, if we have to use this technology, especially in this time, then I think questions related to data policy, to data protection, are actually needs to discuss more and more as well. So I mean, I guess before the COVID situation, I guess a lot of people never raised thoughts about, okay, can I use whatever video platforms like basically like the one we're using right now, or other platforms as well, and actually where is this data stored and all this stuff. Basically these kind of questions have been never raised in that sense, and they came actually in the past 3 months, and I think people also started more to think about, okay, who wants, where would like to give this data to which kind of platforms, and actually which kinds of platforms dealing with it in the right way, and then actually also somehow figured out, okay, well, basically I guess we learned also in a way, okay, here we see that our data is not protected in the right way, and those platforms actually also didn't, I would say, survive this situation where we're in right now. So I had the feeling that for data protection, or the question to data protection was, well, I would say getting more and more important during the past, yeah, let's say 3-4 months.
And for my project, I think it was about prediction and invisible protection, and I think that what's happened since I made that with the uprise, at least in the United States, of racial tensions and Black Lives Matter, and the use of facial recognition and capture, literal capture of people because they go to protests, it becomes even more relevant to understand how we're getting tracked, who has ownership of our identity, how people are getting arrested just for showing up somewhere where they're recognized through the devices of facial recognition. I think our next task, besides just pointing out that these kind of diabolical systems exist, is really to find solutions of to defying them or exposing them, so that we can have a more just and respectful community that we're living in, which also goes to a different sense of reparation, a human reparation, and also one for the planet. And I think that the viralization that happened with the pandemic is really related to the toxic viralization that's possible through digital systems, and something that we really have to be aware of and set our sights to defy as much as possible and expose.
Great. Did you notice that, like, I think a few days ago, the ex-director of NSA became a board member of Amazon, in context of Alex. I think now we are seeing like some kind of like even more acceleration of some processes when the things are getting more and more visible. And, yeah. But also in the same, let's stay in the same area, and I think it's important to discuss, because also, you know, our reality as an artist as also, you know, like changed deeply in last 6 months, and I heard the discussion that two of you had, like in the pause between, like few minutes before this, like live streaming, and so currently our position of art is completely different. The way how we live is completely different. So there is no more flying. There is no more, you know, like exhibitions are different. There is no, you know, like many different institutions are trying to find a way how to overcome those problems. So what is your, so how do you see, you know, what is the future of like, if all of this continue to happening, like for a few years, for example? How do you see your reality as an artist is changing? Your how do you see that events are changing? How do you see this new formats emerging? Are you feeling good about, like, or not, or what is? So what is the position of the artist in this new reality?
Well, I think, you know, as things close up, there's also the possibility of opening up new inventions for creating work and communication. You know, for instance, I was set to make a feature film, but now you can't get insurance. So that whole process of making a film with more than one or two people is over. So you have to invent new ways of using and maybe even new technologies to be able to devise something that reconstructs the limitations or new possibilities that go beyond what your expectations are. So it's really a great opportunity for fresh creative thinking to do what you need to do. And you don't really need to be limited by the disruption that's going on, but rather invent your way out of it through artistic means.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the best art has always shown us what we didn't already know, you know, or what something new that's possible. But on the other hand, a lot of the art world can be very conservative. And I think this has forced a upheaval of that, because it's just the same patterns of working aren't really possible. It's also made me, I mean, it's impossible to ignore what's happening in different parts of the world. And maybe that's, you know, it was one thing when we went outside and had these other interactions, but now when you're on your computer, you're so kind of tuned into all these different realities at the same time. And so I don't know, that's constantly influencing my own work, and I imagine the same for most other artists right now. So I'm just really curious to see what emerges out of that.
I think the way you see art is so limited. You know, I mean, I really was saying earlier how much I didn't realize how much I'd miss going to a museum. And I know museums are trying to do virtual representations of exhibitions, and these are museums that had never done this before. And none of them take advantage of what you could really do with virtuality. And I think this has to change. And it's something that we all will think about in the future, of making exhibitions that will exist online and do have a global reach in a way that they never did before.
Yeah, exactly. I also agree on that, especially when I think about museums and like what you said, basically, I guess we learned also in the beginning that this kind of, let's say, virtual view in the museum didn't work out that well, right? Like, but I guess there is a lot of potential to come up with like super creative ideas and basically thoughts about how we can deal with it. And I guess for artists, it's actually also like a super interesting time to think about, on the one hand, like how can we actually present our artwork in this digital, let's say, world, or in this moment where we are in right now. On the other side, I also think, like, especially museums, for me, sometimes there are also some kind of places where where people are yeah, we kind of leave them out in a way. We don't really. Museums sometimes for me a place where people don't basically feel comfortable by themselves to go there. And I have the feeling that let's say with the tools we are developing right now, especially with let's say this kind of video platforms, conferences, digital tours and so on, I guess I have the feeling we can also invite people which are actually not so familiar with the artwork, let's say with this kind of media artwork, for example, to get them actually also somehow, let's say, a glimpse of and more get, let's say, transport this art to those people which we couldn't reach before the pandemic.
Yeah. So, okay, I would like to switch to maybe more, not to be so like into pandemic and post-pandemic world. Okay, mostly pandemic, not post-pandemic. I would like maybe to try to move to some kind of more positive, let's say. So all three of you in your work are basically exploring the systems that are hidden behind our screens. No? Me, myself also, I really dedicated like a few years of my life trying to map and draw and do different investigations that are also like, investigating this kind of like dark lens behind those screens. No? So, and there is one sentence that I picked from Lauren's presentation. I will read now. There is a critique in all my work, but there is always a part that is about hope. And I don't know, for me it was like really nice to I don't know, somehow this sentence stayed with me, a bit longer. And this is something that I would like maybe to discuss now. So basically, Lauren, you are addressing, you see some hope and you want to go there. Also, Simon, by doing your interventions, doing this kind of like performances, as you call them, you are basically like proposing some kind of like ways how to intervene and ways how to obfuscate this like invisible machine that is controlling how we move and influencing how we move and so on and so on. So clearly you believe that with the intervention maybe we can do something. So there is also something positive in your approach. And Lynn, also in your work, you are also by exposing those like systems that are hidden, you are kind of educating the people about this like obscure and hidden systems and so on and so on. So there is clearly idea of like if you are exposing something, probably you also want to change, you want to achieve some change in order, so that means you probably want something better. So this is what I am kind of like would like to turn discussion in this direction. Okay, what is this like light on the end of the tunnel that you are seeking for, and so what is this hope? What is this positive? So let's say future or positive outcome that you want to achieve?
Well, I think for one thing is that that if you're an artist, you have to be optimistic. That is because I think just to make an artwork, particularly in this field, is so difficult that you have to really believe that you'll figure some sort of solution. And I also think that there's a heroic reach to look, to have your view seek solutions to, kind of as antidotes, or, in some cases even antibodies that will create a cure for the toxicity that we're all living in. In every era there are cures that had to be made because of the usually man-made disasters that we've brought upon ourselves. And so, I see that point of optimism is something that is pervasive in trying to reach forward and look for solutions that only I think the creative spirits are capable of doing in an optimistic. And even though that it could point out some despair, I think that in general that people point out difficulties so that we can overcome and figure out new ways of retracking our future.
Well, I guess for me it's, I would say that art creates in general hope for me, because I mean I was surprised like how people come up with, as you said, like with ideas, like with new ways, and this actually is sometimes like so genius to see, like, okay, actually, you know, that basically there is this kind of, let's say for me, this kind of hope into the people that we can actually somehow figure out a way to deal with this kind of, you know, whatever mess we're gonna do right now. And then basically I really trust in this sense. I would say trust for me generates hope into the people, and especially into art. And
yeah, it's funny. I was talking with Lynn earlier, and we're both in California, and the sky over has been like orange and red and brown lately because of the fires, and it's easy to feel like you're just like living in an apocalyptic moment. But it's totally true what you're all saying about hope, and I think maybe like going a little further and saying like, what is hope? I think it's possible to just float through your life without really living it, and I think a lot of people do that. But right now, the one thing you can say is I think a lot of us are just like living it and being here. And when you think about those moments when you just feel a real moment of connection with someone, or see something differently, that's when you really, like, that's where the hope comes from. I think it's not necessarily that we need to reach utopia. It's like we need to find a way of being present with what's happening and believing that, you know, more is possible. So that's sort of the light at the end of the tunnel for me. But it's also funny, I just wanted to, this question made me think about the piece that I'm showing here, because when I did it, it's just like Lynn was saying, it was so hard. You know, it was like 10 below zero in New York when I was installing it, and it was like this week of just nonstop, like every possible problem you could imagine, and it all kind of like crashed right before the opening. And when it all just like fell apart, I had this feeling of just like, I don't know, this is the dream, like just to be with these people doing this weird thing, and like we did all this work and it didn't even work out, but it was just so unnecessary. That was sort of magical. And then the fact that it kind of came together and that it won this award, for me, I felt like I won it in that moment when I was like, failure is okay too. That is that can be hopeful, right? The fact that we were trying, that's the thing that is exciting. So I guess in this moment of just so much struggle and crisis and pain, like that, just to look around and see people trying and see artists trying to make work out of that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, I think failure is underrated. Actually, I think it's really, really the place that says that we haven't given enough time to the idea that we have, and pushes us forward to find a different solution. Sometimes it redirects us when something doesn't work, and you know that's important to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, and it's the way that you know that you're actually taking risks. Right, like if everything works all the time, you have to kind of question, you know, are you going far enough?
Well, Vladan, since that we have only 5 minutes more, maybe the last question from your side, Vladan. What do you think?
Yeah, why not? So I will maybe. I had this feeling like when Emiko, I think Emiko called me to join this jury for Ars Electronica this year, and it was like interactive art, and I said like, my God, you know, I'm not so sure that I even know what the interactive art and who to invite, you know, whatever. But and then she said like, yeah, but it's an interactive art plus, you know, and then in this plus you can have whatever you want, and it's so really wide and stuff like this. So I was like, and clearly all of your work belongs to plus, not completely into interactive art. No. How do you define And I think this also tells us that it's kind of like really hard in present days to define those categories, and I really don't think that they should maybe exist at all. But how do you define your work as a plus, in a sense? What is, I don't want to ask you what is plus in interactive art, but how you define your work? What is it? Can you say it in like 3 or 5 words? If you need to name the category after you, how it will be called?
I would say I don't like categories.
Yeah.
I think they're really limiting. I think they're excuses for not making it. They're like prisons, you know, when you say what you are, because it doesn't allow you to go beyond that. And I think that life uses time and the future's porous. So when you have new breath coming in because of a porous system, you're out. If you're alert, you're changing with it, and continually moving through it. So I wouldn't have a definition. I try not to, which confuses people for a long time.
So long live the plus. We are okay with plus.
Yeah, probably the plus is on the thin line, right? Like where you can discuss it. Is it art, or what is it actually in that sense, right? So this kind of discussions every day, like where we have to define, basically where we have to discuss what is art and how we gonna, let's say, of course, I mean, if we don't like to categorize, but is that basically still part of the art world, or could it be also something else? I guess this is like this kind of thin line for me, what the plus means to me.
Yeah, I would say I'll take any category. I'll use any category that will let me get into you, you know, that will get me in to wherever you're at, and try to work it from that angle.
Yeah, yeah, it's very cool that because that some of the visitors of the Cyber Arts exhibition, I already heard, oh, interactive art plus category this year. There's a lot of nice project, but very critical toward the technology, and sometimes I feel like the dystopia or something like this. But actually, the real artists all are very optimistic and really see the current situation as an opportunity of the creativity. And I really like that, Lynn, you said that if you're an artist, you have to be optimist. I think this is the really good word and the really truth. So actually this year's the Prix Ars Electronica submission was that until March of 2020, so most probably that next year's edition of the Prix Ars Electronica 2021, I expect a lot of optimistic, futuristic project also next year, and I hope that you all also again submit to the Prix Ars Electronica 2021. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Lynn, thank you, Roland, and thank you, Vladan, and thank you, Simon, for joining us, and see you next time.
Thank you.